Welcome everybody to this session on traditional medicines and indigenous ways. We are very happy that today we have 3 moderators and 12 speakers from different countries in the 3 continents, from Africa, Europe, from Asia, and also from Latin America. So this panel started when we had the idea of linking more with each other on the question of the COVID, and is now, although there seem to be the vaccines that will be providing some kind of relief to the current problems we face with the COVID-19. Still, it is there are still seem to be quite a lot of problems, not only about the efficacy of the vaccines, but also about the affordability and also whether they could be widely distributed. And so for us, especially those from the global south, the question is whether the vaccines would be the only way for the prevention and also for the treatment. So this time we have the co-organizing by the Global University for Sustainability, by Lingnan University, and by ALBA movements to be hosting this panel during the World Social Forum sessions. And I'm very pleased to be inviting also Dr. Katharina Weingartner, who is the film director of the film The Fever. We just screened the film in the last 2 hours, and it is a very moving film, and then so many problems have been brought up in the film. So we will be listening to them. So I would welcome you all to this session. So if you could listen to the channels, there's the Spanish channel, English channel, and the Chinese channel. So please click the globe on the bottom of the screen. So now I would like to first introduce myself. I teach cultural studies in Lingnan University in Hong Kong, China. And currently I'm a coordinator of the program on cultures of sustainability in the Center for Cultural Research and Development, Lingnan University. I'm a founding member of the Global University for Sustainability, where we have 200 founding members. And I also head the Global University Executive Team working in Hong Kong. I've been involved in the rural reconstruction movement in China for almost 2 or 3 decades. And I'm board member of the Peace Women Across the Globe and also Asian Regional Exchange for New Alternatives. And today we have 2 other moderators who are moderating with me. That is Dr. Nicoletta Dentico. She's a journalist and a senior policy analyst in global health and development. After directing the Doctors Without Frontiers in Italy, she played an active role in the MSF campaign on access to essential medicines. She worked as consultant of the World Health Organization, and she currently leads the Global Health Program for the Society for International Development. And our moderator from Latin America is Mr. Hernan Vargas. He is from the Urban Inhabitants Platform in Venezuela. He also works for ALBA Movement's Secretariat, and he is particularly responsible for political articulations and solidarity. He is also an independent researcher on social reproduction and popular economies. So now I would like to hand over the moderation to my colleague, Dr. Nicoletta, please.
Thank you very much. I'm absolutely thrilled about this meeting, this global meeting today. And I think it is a real privilege to be moderating and to being part of designing this appointment. I really want to thank Professor Kinchi Lau and Professor Tsui for assembling us all together and for bringing up this breakthrough discussion. I think it is an absolutely fundamental moment for us to get together and debate about the implications and the many questions that the movie has raised. As Professor Kinchi Lau was mentioning, there are many issues that the movie has triggered. One of the major pedagogies of COVID-19 that is being echoed more and more in the global health community is the need for decolonizing medicines, decolonizing health. And that is why the discussion that we are starting now is particularly timely and particularly relevant because, of course, the pandemic provides a unique opportunity to, take back all the things that we have kind of hidden below the carpet, to bring them back and to make them appear for what they are, relevant issues. The movie, The Fever, talks about malaria. We have discussed it already with Katharina, whom I welcome very much, when the film was launched in Austria. This movie talks about a global disease which is still pretty much around us. But in fact, it kind of winks at COVID-19. It does talk about COVID-19 to a great extent. So I don't think I have to, give any instructions on how we could take some of the teachings of this movie and reverberate the echoes of this movie to what we are all living today in the pandemic. Professor Kinchi Lau was mentioning the vaccine programs in Europe. This is going to be the Europe-Africa session. Of course, as you may know, as you all know, Europe, after 1 year of COVID-19 and after a lot of public funding for the research and development for vaccines, drugs, diagnostics, is now finding itself totally in the hands of a few private companies that are whose power is based on monopolies, and who maybe, I think, will be using this leverage for the future. I was interviewed this morning by Business Insiders, and we were trying to project what the year 2021 will be in terms of the access to vaccines fight between governments that have paid and companies that produce. So certainly the idea of having public needs that are totally entrusted into the hands of profit-making entities is a paradigm that has its limitations. So we have always known, the global health community has always known that. But now it's possible, I think, to bring out the idea of new paradigms, of new ways of producing public goods and making drugs, medicines, and vaccines available to everybody, and in a variety of approaches that need to be totally considered and integrated. So it is with great pleasure that I will be starting this moderation with three very important speakers. I just would like to unfortunately mention that we will not be able to have Professor Grace Nambatia from Uganda. She would have been a great contribution, but unfortunately she has connection problems, and we have not been able to get her on this discussion. I think we will have to catch up in a different moment, but we will be entertaining our conversation with the author of the movie, Katharina Weingartner, who is an extremely good film director, as you have seen already, and a very courageous woman. Then we will have Ben Cashdan, who is a filmmaker and an economist in Johannesburg. He has been an economy advisor to Nelson Mandela in 1995 and is now researching a movie on the global pharmaceutical industry. So this is extremely important to have Ben in this discussion. And finally, we have with us Professor Niang, who teaches at the Cheikh Anta Diop University of Dakar in Senegal, who is a specialist in social anthropology and environmental sciences. And he has worked a lot on HIV/AIDS. So, you know, we take different diseases, but we will find a lot of commonalities. I have decided to introduce the speakers right from the start, because you already get a feeling of who is going to weave this discussion in this initial session. So enough of my words, and with all my gratitude again, I'll give the floor now to Katharina Weingartner, the director of The Fever that we have just seen. Katharina, the floor is yours.
Hello to the world. This is very exciting. Thank you so much for putting this together, Professor Kim Chi Lau and your team. It's been amazing to see you pulling this off in such a short time. And thanks for the doctor. I was on my way there, but I stopped to become a creative person. But sounds good, Dr. Katharina Weingartner. I like that. Anyways, thanks for watching the film together. And thanks for your introduction, Nicoletta. Yes, I think I made a film about malaria, but malaria is not the real issue here. It's a film about decolonization, really. And malaria is just one disease. We can do exactly the same with COVID. And it's such an interesting coincidence that the TCM medicine in China is actually using Artemisia annua in a mixture with other herbs to treat COVID, even in the hospitals. I know from somebody who imports TCM medicine herbs to Austria that the Chinese government actually offered the Austrian government 30,000 units of TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, for treatment of the worst COVID cases in Austria, and it was refused by the Austrian government to take it even for free, because they said, how can herbs treat a disease like COVID? It is not rational, it is not evidence-based medicine. No, we refuse that. Just one example. But because our film has taken the perspective from East Africa, and it was a very important step for us to do this, to step back with Western scientists. I have interviewed for this film 150 malaria scientists all over the world, most of them white males. And we made a decision against the will of our producers to not show them in the film, which meant that 4 years ago, I was stopped in my path. Our producers, the public TV stations in Switzerland, Germany, and Austria, removed themselves from the project, which was a highly funded, very prestigious project in Germany and Austria. And they refused to this day to show this film on public television. And their argument is, there are no scientists in this film. There are no scientists in this film. We have a biologist from Nairobi, we have a pharmacologist from Uganda, and we have a herbalist, a very knowledgeable herbalist from Uganda. Now I ask you the questions. Why do these editors and finances from Switzerland, Germany, and Austria tell me that I have no scientists in my film? I think that is the key question. What is science? And is science only what the West is paying and what the West is interested in? So that's one of my key questions, and that's one of my key departures also, where I saw that a filmmaker like me is also running into walls when we do not have somebody like Ibrahima, who really knows her herbal ways. What was asked from me is that I have a professor from Oxford University, for example, commentate on what Ibrahima has to say. So only his validation makes Ibrahima's argument a fact. Everything else, I was told, is a felt reality, not a reality. So what she is doing in her village getting a whole village malaria free with prophylaxis with a simple herb, Artemisia, is not a reality. But it took me 7 years to finish the film because of these incredible resistance in Europe to give the way to other knowledge, to indigenous knowledge, to the knowledge of women all over the world, to urban knowledge, to a knowledge that cannot be copyrighted, to a knowledge that has always been there, always, forever, and that is just not respected in the Western or in the global North. Now that was the resistance, but to give you an example from Dr. Nambatya, I was there in December in Uganda, and I had a very interesting meeting with her. After watching the film for 5 minutes, she said, "You are a godsend. It's exactly what we need in Uganda, in every village. We will show this film. I hope the government will be able to support me in getting this film from village to village in Uganda, together with the herb Artemisia afra, which is the local version of Artemisia annua, and which has an even better anti-malarial activity than Artemisia annua, and it grows better in these climates. So we will have the opportunity to go with Rehema, with the film, and with this herb from village to village. And the Dr. Nambatya, who heads the Institute for Herbal Research at the Ministry of Health, wants to make it together with PRESIDE, which is the Presidential Initiative on Epidemic Research. They want to accompany my screening tour through Uganda with a scientific research project that I'm trying to get off the ground now, where we are actually looking at the malaria cases in each village before the film and the herb arrive. And then 6 to 12 months later, want to follow up and see what the actual impact is, so that we can finally have the evidence that is always asked for, to show the world that this herb works against malaria in treatment and prophylaxis. So this is a really exciting moment for me. We are right now, I think, at a point where, I mean, this film has gotten so much interest in Austria, and because of COVID, I was only able to show it in Austria so far. Even we were invited to film festivals from Brazil to Taiwan to China. In China, the film was taken out of a festival due to sensitive content. It did not pass Chinese censorship, unfortunately. In Guangzhou, it was supposed to be at the film festival. So we see there's a lot of other interests who don't want this message to be out. But with this starting point in Uganda now, I'm very excited that we can start this, let me call it a revolution, a herbal revolution, and also a revolution of the mind. And if we can start this from East Africa, I mean, it's the best, I think it's the best starting point to go from those villages through a supporting government and show the powers that be that there is another way, which is carried by women, which is carried by local traditions, which is simple, local, cheap, doable for every family, and also how can it be prevented? You know, how can this be further prevented? I have not looked at the watch, but let me just give you one example from Dr. Nambatya. When I got there, she just had spent a sleepless night because they are working on a herbal COVID medicine, which is comprised of bee poison, like the poison that bees have in their, when they give a sting, they give a poison, combined with an herb called Walburgia, I think. And she wanted to do a clinical trial on COVID patients in Uganda. Now, the WHO asks for an insurance of every patient who participates in that trial. She called every insurance agency in Uganda if they will insure those patients. She did not find an insurance agency who would do this. And she said, okay, that means the end of our project. If we cannot insure the patients, we don't get the permission. Now, what do we do? And how can I get around this? And how can our whole country and our whole continent get around these requirements by the WHO? Just to give you an example of what's happening with COVID. And also, I mean, there is COVID research with Artemisia in Mexico right now. There was a big clinical trial in Mexico done by the Max Planck Institute in Berlin, which is a very respected research facility in Germany. And the director of the Max Planck Institute, who is leading this research, told me, once you start dealing with herbs, there's an icy wind blowing against you, and be careful with your work, he told me. And this study will be published this week. So let's see what the international pharmaceutical community can say about organizations like that participating in our research. Just one more thing, maybe 3 minutes. Okay, let me, as a filmmaker, talk about something very important to me. The Fever is a film that, due to the situation with film funding, was done by a Austrian Swiss German team. But I always said that it is a film from an African perspective, and I would prefer to also give the making of these images and the making of this content into African hands. And luckily, the Austrian film funds understand that there has to be a change with who produces the information, who produces the images. Can it forever be the global North who makes the images for the global South and depict people in the global South as victims of their situations, as victims of colonization and so on? And they agreed that we can produce now Fever 2, which will be a film done by a Ugandan director and a Kenyan producer. And we can actually shift the funds to East Africa, which is a really amazing shift, if you know the film funding situation. And they will do a film where they go with Rehema through the villages to make a documentary about how Rehema and these people and health activists and public health activists and scientists and people from the Ugandan government and hopefully many, many women make a film about their experiences and the implementation of this herb in Uganda, which could be a real starting point for a totally different approach to medicine, to who owns the rights to their medicine, and maybe also from a global North perspective, show us new ways how to deal with this information, with these people and with these images. So I'm very excited about this. And I think it is telling that a petition has been started from Switzerland that already has 160 signatures from big pharmaceutical corporations, from tropical medicine institutes, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, from the doctors who tell us about COVID from our TV screens. All these people have signed a petition against our film. They don't want this film to be shown on television anywhere in the world. They don't want it to be shown in cinemas in Germany or Switzerland. And all we can do is now ask for funding. We have started an organization called Plant the Seed, Fight the Fever. It's called Fight the Fever. Here you see it. We have a website. We ask for donations because our film is being censored and we need to get this message out. This is our slogan: plant the seed, fight the fever. The letters are written in Artemisia leaves. And here is the Artemisia seed in the back in an envelope. So I was with this in Uganda. I could have spread thousands of these. The people were ripping them from my hands. Everybody wants to plant this magic plant, Artemisia. And through the film and the seed, I think we can start a revolution. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katharina. Thank you so much for telling us your experience, your struggle. This shows what a movie can do. And you are talking about the herbal revolution and the revolution of the mind. I think really considering one of the key messages that I found in the film, that is really the pandemic is a syndemic. It's actually, you know, a system pathology, not just a health issue. This film, I think, needs to be inserted in this, needs to be contextualized in this type of approach towards COVID-19, absolutely. Thank you very much again. And of course, there will be questions, I guess, coming to you in a later moment of our discussion. If Ben Cashdan allows me, I would like to give the floor first to Professor Niang, because we have touched upon COVID-19. We, of course, have touched upon malaria through the movie. Professor Niang, as well as being a social anthropologist, he is actually an expert on environmental and environmental sciences, and he has worked a lot on HIV/AIDS and public health, as we were saying earlier. So I would like to have his perspective first on what the movie shows, on what Katharina has said, and then of course I'll give the floor to Ben Cashdan, who is working on the global pharmaceutical industry. So let's keep on just looking at, you know, the situation, the diseases, and then go back to the more global perspective. Professor Niang, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicoletta, and thank you very much, Professor Kingshi. I am very pleased to be here, and I thank you very much for inviting me. I can say that I was very moved by the film, because as you said, as Katharina said just earlier, it's about the mind and the mindset. I think that is very, very important here. And I like your conclusion when you say syndemic. I would maybe change it a little bit and say also it's an epidemic in the sense of epidemic of epistemes and of epistemicide, of killing the knowledge, killing some particular knowledge. And this is very striking, because this killing of the knowledge go in connection with denying culture, cultural achievement, cultural identities, cultural constructions, and erasing this culture to impose only Western culture. So it's interesting, because if you look at many African cultures, in particular many African languages like mine, we use one word, garab. Garab means the medicine, but the same word means also the tree or the plant, because the medicine, healing is healing through plants, herbs, seeds, and trees. So this vegetable is, the mention of the vegetable is at the root of, if you look at this side, what is the tree, what is the plant? It's the knowledge. The knowledge is embedded. Okay, now I am trying to say that if you look at the languages, and because the languages is a reflection of the culture, and the issue here is the clash that many African cultures have been trying to preserve their philosophical understanding of the reality, instead of just having this culture, this cultural heritage, to be erased and replaced by one single cultural model, that is Western model. Oh, so in these languages, in many of these languages, the word for medicine, for cure, for treatment is garab. Garab is the same word than the trees or the plant. So you cannot envisage, you cannot envision a healing without references to plants and trees. And plants and trees are also metaphors for knowledge. Knowledge have been pushed aside and impose only one type of so-called scientific knowledge. This is at the root of pandemic. So and this starts when I talk about epistemicity. It starts from the education, from the universities. How can we see that the producer of knowledge of African culturally knowledge or other knowledge, how these people have been denied of their status of knowledge production, learn from the movie. And secondly, when I can bring a lot of anecdotal reports, and when a knowledge producer, what a traditional healer will go and get the medicine for you. If you go to the plant, he starts by greeting the plant, by recognizing the plant, by singing the plant. So there is an attitude of humility. So this attitude of humility is an ecological attitude that doesn't put the human being, the man, at the center or on top of the nature, but put it in a situation of someone of lower status in front of the nature and in front of the plant. This philosophical principle is erased in the classical normal science, and it is at the root of this ecological disaster that we are heading for. So it looks like with COVID-19, it's not only a health crisis, it's also an ecological crisis, and show us where we are heading for if we continue the hegemony of this Western paradigm. And if you go, I can use another word. So from the knowledge, how the knowledge circulates in the society. Knowledge is not something private, something reserved to some people. It's knowledge. Now, the condition of transmission will look at some ethical issues. We will not, the traditional healer will not give the knowledge to everybody. And then they give it to the. So it's an initiatic system of transmission of the knowledge where the verification of the criteria of ethic will be part of the transmission of knowledge. And humility, how humility is constructed, and in a way that will allow the transmission of the knowledge. Because this knowledge, once it's reached a certain point, it's become popular knowledge. That means that everybody will take the herbs, but know that the herbs will help for that, so that thing was that. So the knowledge will be embedded into the families, and in that families, and in that space, who will control the use of the knowledge and bring some additional knowledge is the woman. So women at the center of she will be at the center of knowledge production and the fabric of health. Yes, on the fabric of health, that's the fabric of health in many African cultures. And as you see, the modern scientific knowledge which exclude women as a central figure of that. So I would like to, some issues, I will be around these issues of ethic. You know, when you go to many situations, people, the healer will drink the medicine first before he give it to you, to tell you the empathy. If you die, I die with you. So the power relation is something completely different. And finally, I share with you, the issue here is not only called COVID. The issue is decolonizing the mind. And the issue is here. How can we shake the tree, the cockatoo? How can we challenge the power of the power relation within the knowledge production in order to allow all societies, because the heritage of humankind is Western culture are showing, African societies are showing in front of COVID, is not biological resilience, it's social resilience, it's way of life, it's how they interact with themselves, and what lesson can be learned that can be shared with the rest of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Niang. Your pearls of wisdom, of really, you know, the profound human knowledge that we really need to recuperate if we want to have a chance of survival on this planet. So thank you so much indeed. And I now give the floor to Ben Cashdan. Ben, another filmmaker and someone that is actually going to produce another pearl of information and reporting on a particularly important issue, the role of the global pharmaceutical industry. Ben, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? I hope so.
Indeed, thank you very well. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicoletta, Kinchi, Katharina, Professor Niang, and everybody. In South African style, I have to say, long live the solidarity of people all around the world for decolonizing knowledge and healthcare. And down with the solidarity, fake solidarity between countries like in the BRICS group, that is to shine the chains of imperialism, I think, these days, and not to offer real solidarity. I'm a late arrival on this panel. It was just hours ago by my friend and comrade Patrick Bond to stand in for him as he had to rush to the doctor. I stayed up last night wondering why he was kind enough to ask me to stand in for him and to stay up all night preparing for this event. It could be that I'm the $1 million man. And here's my proof. This is the medicine. This is my herb that I take on a daily basis. Some of you might recognize it's a very famous medicine produced by our friends at Novartis, which I take for my Gleevec, which I take for my leukemia. And it will cost across my lifetime $1 million to keep me alive. Luckily, I don't have to pay the full amount, but more of that in my film. Or could it be that when I was in Mandela's office, we were fighting one of the first big struggles to decolonize big pharma, which was the struggle, of course, for affordable antiretrovirals, which we won, I believe, with a global civil society movement. And we got AIDS medicines down from $12,000 to about $30 per month. Huge drop through asserting the political will of the people of the world. So my talk is supposed to be on the case for COVID-19 vaccines to be global public goods. I could be out of place on this panel because I'm not necessarily looking for alternatives, but perhaps there's a tension as we decolonize between the perspective that says we all own as global public goods everything, all the knowledge of the world, versus an approach that says we need alternatives to so-called Western cures that may not be so Western, in fact. That's a tension, a discussion point maybe for us as we go forward. It seems common sense that COVID-19 vaccines are public goods. They benefit us all like world peace or fresh air. But in economics, we have this narrow definition that you're all aware of a public good as something which is non-excludable and non-rivalrous. You can't stop anybody from benefiting from it, and it doesn't matter how much one person uses. There's plenty for everybody else. So it does get a bit tricky when we're starting to talk about COVID-19 vaccines. Traffic lights are public goods, but let's consider airbags or life jackets. They are bought as commodities. They could get used up. So we had to make, as a society, we had to make them public goods. We had to legislate that they should be plentiful, they should be universally available, and that, you know, it shouldn't be a case of people who are in accidents being a cost to the public health system or suffering as individuals. So we had to make them non-excludable and non-rivalrous. Why don't we do that with COVID-19 vaccines? We have the tools, the Doha Declaration on TRIPS, of course, that allows us to do compulsory licensing and so on. The manufacturers say no. So let's deal with their objections. They say we have a right to our monopolies, our patents, our profits in return for our risk and investment. They say, in fact, beyond that, that we as the people, we need them to make profit to drive future innovation. They're very clever. They say their profits are the public goods. In fact, of course, Nicoletta in MSF knows much better than me. We have all the arguments against this. First, on the right to profit in return for investment. Check the facts. It's nonsense. Moderna received $1 billion or more from the US government. AstraZeneca, you know, millions of investment through the University of Oxford, and all the companies, even Pfizer, who say, no, we didn't take any public money. It's nonsense. They all benefited from 30 years, 40 years of public investment in how to sequence DNA and manufacture RNA, and they all got these advance orders from the US government. So no, Big Pharma, you don't have a right to mark up your vaccines from a cost price of $2 to a sale price of $18. You don't even have a right to mark up your sale price from $2 to $5, which is the price being quoted by the Serum Institute of India to South Africa for the AstraZeneca's vaccine, more than they quoted to Europe. Europe's going to get that vaccine cheaper than Africa because Europe invested in the research, they say. We reject your right to a 200% or a 2,000% markup. Outrageous. What about the argument that mega profits drive innovation? It's just not true. Great recent research looking back at 50 years of mega profits by Big Pharma, clearly showing it has disincentivized innovation. You get less innovation as you get more profit, because Big Pharma says, well, we better keep that return to our shareholders, so we better find cheaper ways, lazy ways to just recycle old cures and less innovation. So it's not true. So the real Big Pharma game here in the COVID-19 world of vaccines is externalize the risk, internalize the profit. Classic capitalist corporate welfare. So that sets the stage for our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, faced by vaccine nationalism, speaking at the other global gathering yesterday, not the World Social Forum, but the World Economic Forum. And I'll paraphrase him. He said, please, Western nations, give us your extra doses. You don't need them, boss. There has been an effort at the WTO to waive intellectual property that many of us have been following, to allow for a people's vaccine, removing monopolies, reducing prices and scarcity, making vaccines so plentiful, so cheap that they become public goods, non-excludable, non-rivalrous. But President Ramaphosa, yesterday at the WEF, he didn't mention it. Even though South Africa has been part of that initiative, the WTO, he didn't mention it as he spoke to world leaders and corporate CEOs. And returning to my metaphor of the crashing car or the life jacket for the boat, could that hold the seeds of why he didn't? Could it be that when the boat is sinking or the car is crashing or the gun is to all of our heads, metaphorically speaking, you don't want to be the one to rock the boat? President Ramaphosa would rather, like many developing countries, be friends with the salesman. Let's take 10 life jackets for the family before the boat sinks. Let's not discuss the framework today. Or in other words, to really, take this in a cynical vein, if South Africa can do a few quick deals to buy 10 million doses and beg for 5 million more, at least we'll be better off than Mozambique or Gabon. In that way, South Africa reinforces its position as the sub-imperialists of the global system of vaccine nationalism and corporate welfare. And notably, South Africa has veered away from seriously considering the Chinese-developed vaccine or the Russia-developed vaccine or the cheaper Indian home-produced vaccine, not the AstraZeneca one, the other one, or God forbid, a socialist vaccine from Cuba, defining them as less well-regulated medicine approval zones. That's what we have from our medicine regulator. Under the current global vaccine apartheid, we'd prefer to have proper vaccines, capitalist vaccines, colonial vaccines, expensive vaccines. The irony is that at this precise moment, with the gun to our head, the ship sinking, the car crashing, it's actually the powerful, important moment to change the system, to build the global solidarity for a people's vaccine. We may never have another chance. If we don't seize this opportunity, tens of millions of people will die in the global south, proving that some lives are worth less than others. But even more than that, as the Financial Times opinioned this week, it won't be good for the rich countries to leave out the so-called poor countries. The virus will mutate unchecked and come back and get them in the rich countries. So COVID vaccines are really to be understood by us in the World Social Forum, in the global social movements, as public goods and truly global public goods, like the fight against climate change. But we have to fight to make that happen. It's a repeat of our South African struggle for affordable AIDS medicines, a struggle that was won on the streets of Johannesburg, the streets of Philadelphia, San Francisco, New Delhi, amongst others, probably in Rome as well, Nicoletta. The WHO's COVAX does not go far enough. It's nonsense. It's a purchasing club to make the pharmaceutical companies richer. We need research pooling, open sourcing, immediate tech transfer, price transparency. In the first instance, all the empty laboratories, it's Sanofi or Merck, anyone who didn't develop a vaccine, tomorrow they must be producing the vaccines we know work at cost and distributing to the world. And then, as with ARVs, we need to share the formula with the world. My partner is a health scientist. She says it's a 3-page protocol that you need to make RNA, publish it, let generic firms get to work in India, Brazil, Thailand, Cuba, and we can have enough vaccines for the world at cost. Of course, as others have said, it's part of the larger battle to decolonize intellectual property, whether it's copywriting research, whether it's patenting medicines, and we better do it now if we want to get health, education, knowledge, and sustainable livelihoods to all our people. Just to end, I'll repeat the question I wanted to ask Professor Niang and others. Do we need alternatives? Is it a matter of alternatives? Or as we decolonize the knowledge that allows us all to be healthy and all to prosper, whether it's a plant that can be seen to benefit malaria sufferers, or whether it's global vaccines, what we should be doing is reclaiming all the knowledge as our knowledge. They're not Western vaccines. They're the knowledge of the world, whether Chinese or Russian or made in America in Trump land under a MAGA regime. We don't care. They're all of our vaccines. They're the global public goods, whether plants or whether high-tech science, which anybody can perform. So this may be a counterpoint, alternatives versus reclaiming everything. Thank you so much for giving me the chance.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you so much. If not now, when, as we would say, if we don't do it now, after 20 years of struggle, disease by disease, drug by drug, this is not going to lead us very far. And this is actually the time to turn the page. I think as we liberate knowledge from its proprietary regime, we will liberate the various forms of knowledge that exist, thank God, in this world, the biodiversity of knowledge that exists in this world. I really wish to thank you very much for your very inspiring interventions. So I think we've come to an end. I think it's a very enticing, a very stimulating start, thanks to the speakers of this panel. And at this point, I would like to give back the floor to our host, to Kinchilao, for the second session. We move from Africa to Asia. Thank you very much to all the speakers, and thank you for this very important trigger, epistemic stimulation that we need. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you to Nicoletta, and thanks to our three very eminent speakers. So we will come back to Africa. So please do not leave, because we will be coming back after we go to Asia and Latin America. And from the film actually that was screened, we learned that every year in Africa, 1 million people died of malaria. And even now with so-called all these medicines, etc., so still 500,000 people die every year in Africa because of malaria. And of course, we know that Dr. Tuyuyo got the Nobel Prize for on the question of artemisinin, but then still, that doesn't seem to have helped the situation. And I think just now we were drawn to the question of not only about whether there are these practices on the field. We see all these kind of obstacles, especially from the major pharmaceutical companies. And so they have, and we can also see the kind of influence they have on national governments, on the WHO. And so the question is, to tackle the question of health, we need to see it is not only a medical problem, it is also a problem of global structures, of profits, of greed, and of power. So now I would like to move to our Asian speakers. And we are supposed to hear first from Dr. Tusham Ralal from Kerala, but she has not been able to sign in yet. So we will first listen to our speakers from China, and then we will come to India. So first, I would like to invite Professor Tsui Jade Margaret, who is our partner in organizing this activity. She is Associate Professor at the Institute of Rural Reconstruction of China, Southwest University in Chongqing. And she's also visiting scholar at the Federal University of Espírito Santo in Brazil. She is board member of the Asian Regional Exchange for New Alternatives and also one of the founding members of Global University for Sustainability. And she has been actively involved in the rural reconstruction movement in China since the year 2000. So Professor Sid, please.
Kinchi and I wrote an article entitled The Need for Recovering the Subjugated Knowledge of Traditional Chinese Medicine, published on Development Journal in December 2020. My presentation is based on our observations and arguments. The pandemic is a call for the world to not only make COVID-19 vaccine a global public good or a common good, but also to instill universal access to healthcare, where the solution is either waiting for the effective vaccines or watching people die like flies in the herd immunity scheme. Apparently, no other alternatives are in sight. However, for the billions who will need to find a way to survive, is there indeed no alternative? China has, compared to the United States, Brazil, or India, effectively contained the pandemic spread as well as its casualties. One major factor is the preventive measures of wearing masks, washing hands, and practicing isolation. Despite the privatization of hospital and healthcare for over 2 decades, there are institutional mechanism and popular mobilization that contribute to the efforts to fight the pandemic. What has also drawn attention is the widespread use of traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, based on traditional wisdom and practice, popular reception, and inexpensive local herbs. The starting point is to see that whatever their different effectiveness, Western medicine and TCM belong to two parallel, if not opposite, philosophies, approaches, and treatment methods. TCM has a history of, some say, 8,000 to 10,000 years in China. Body dissection parts and names of disease were recorded on bones dating back to 3,500 years ago. The first medical classic was Huangdi Neijing, estimated to be compiled between 475 and 206 BC. Another classics of 450 years ago is the Compendium of Materia Medica, considered considered the most comprehensive classic with details of herbs and animal parts for medicinal use. There are thousands of medical books and manuscripts on TCM. However, within a century, TCM has gone under. There are external and internal factors contributing to the going under of TCM with the introduction of Western medicine. Culturally, the West was seen as superior after its military victory in China since the mid-19th century, starting with the Opium War in 1842. The significance of TCM has regained recognition only when alternative treatments and therapies are being sought to fight SARS in 2003 and even in today to fight COVID-19. According to official statistics, the 三药上方, the free medicines and free medical formulas approved by the state had an overall effective rate of over 90% in relieving symptoms, preventing mild and common cases from developing into severe cases, improving the recovery rate and reducing a fatality rate, and boosting the recovery of patients during their rehabilitation process. In terms of cost, the average expense for treating by Western medicine of a confirmed COVID-19 patient was RMB 23,000, around $3,400, and for a severe case is RMB 150,000, is about $22,000. In contrast, one course of treatment of 3 days with lung cleansing and detoxifying decoction costs only RMB 100. That means around $15. TCM or TM everywhere have baskets of problems to handle. It is not as if Western medicine is problematic or inadequate. That TM becomes the golden recipe. Not only is there a question of heritage or nurturing medical practitioners to take on the lineage, there is also a major devastation and disappearing of traditional herbal plants under rapid urbanization, massive deforestation, and raging climate change. We would like to stress that when scientifically proven is the magic sword waged by the hegemon of Western medicine, the alternative is not resorting to anti-science, but an interrogation of how the anti-concept of science has become monolithic, upheld by the military and monetary muscles of the Western powers, so that the universalistic idea of science comes to refer not only to Eurocentric theories and practices, negating and demonizing other long-standing theories and practices. What also needs to be interrogated is the approach and methodology of modern science. To counter the threats on scientifically proven, Drawing on long traditions of diverse civilizations, we should acknowledge the wisdom of the culturally proven, putting problems and solutions in context. When one day profit-making is removed from essential medicines, when food and fresh water is guaranteed for all humans on Earth, when diverse cultures gain genuine recognition and respect, we can together survive. Thank you very much.
So now I would like to introduce our second speaker from China. And so this is Dr. Guo Xinzhi. She is the Chief Medical Officer and Director of the Shanxi Poliomyelitis Rehabilitation Hospital and the specialist and pioneer in the recovery, prevention, and study of poliomyelitis and senile dementia. She had conducted 20 years of intensive research into the treatment and had tested acupuncture and medicine on her own body. Dr. Guo has achieved many breakthroughs in the treatment of poliomyelitis, which was previously deemed incurable, and she is very well known in China and internationally. So now we have done a pre-recording of her speech yesterday, so we are now showing this to you.
大家好，我在山西太原，我叫郭新志，我就是做康复医学的。现在呢，我就是给8岁的男孩，他是一个智力低下语言障碍，另外他有多动症啊，也就是我们说的孤独症、自闭症，他是一个混合性的都有。但他已经治疗了5个疗程，现在是第5个疗程，效果还非常显著。他过去在学校呢，在上学的时候，他可能就1分钟不停的很多的无效的活动，再一个很捣乱别人啊。他经过5个疗程的治疗呢，他现在安静下来了，但他还没有完全好，他还需要继续巩固治疗。他叫曾凯一，我现在开始给他治疗。这个孩子治疗呢，一个我们要从大脑，因为他是以大脑为主，主要是大脑控制不了他自己的行为，他的语言也有些障碍。那我现在呢，要给他扎手针、面针、眼针和头针。首先我给他扎手针，那手上的穴位呢，为了让他其他地方都不疼，我首先给他扎合谷，合谷是个止疼的针，再一个给他扎个外关，手3里曲池。但这个孩子他已经尝到甜头啊，他觉得他每治疗1个疗程，他都有一定的效果，所以他现在给他少扎1针都不可以啊。我现在给他扎手针，首先扎合谷，这是心督，这是治眼睛的，他视力也不好，但这一块呢就是他的头部，这是后溪啊。针都是一次性的针啊，首先消毒，合谷啊，心督，这都是治眼部的穴位，这是治他的大脑，好啊，后溪、外关、列曲、手3里。曲池，这以头部为主的。但手针呢也是同样要给他捻3次，每1根针捻1分钟，要捻280次，每分钟要捻280次，一共捻3次针。现在手针就扎结束，现在我要给他扎眼针啊。首先点酒消毒。酒精脱点，因为免疫比较低下，我要给他扎天突，对语言有好处，还要给他扎膻中、地仓、人中、太阳、鼻咽口舌区。好，就是我们传统的经络学和我们的以大脑功能定位的神经结合起来。 这是给他扎头围，对泌尿生殖系统，还要给他扎情感稳定区。你看，少扎一针都是不可以的。他扎了以后呢，他觉得他说话这些就方便一些啊。好。我们的主要特点是进针快、捻针快、起针快，这样我们的面针就结束了。好，起床，扎头。首先也是碘酒消毒，前运动后感觉，我们要给他扎感觉区和运动区。现在他扎的是正常区和血管收缩区，我们还要扎他的市区、百会、通涌泉、市区的加强，最后再扎他的眼门风池和大椎，对他的语言、睡眠和整个的脊柱的发育都有好处。这个有一些危险，不能留针啊。这个头针呢和他的手针继续再捻2遍，10分钟捻1遍，再捻2遍，3次就够了，就该起针了，它就算结束了。睁开一，好，再来一个啊，他的手眼协调是很差的。好，你走一圈，从这儿走到那儿，再上啊，好的，好好走。哎，你看他走路他是尖嘴啊。它就是一个典型的牛仔针了。好，躺在这儿。所以扎手针可以促进左手可以促进右大脑的发育。像他这么大的孩子呢，他就是一般孩子就学，如果要是1岁以内开始治，那我们这个方法比较简单，性物治疗也比较单纯啊。一个疗程就是20次。现在由于那个社会竞争比较大，人们的思想比较紧张，另外我们吃的喝的规律性也比较差，所以大部分呢这个脑梗都提前，比如说40、50岁的人都有淤堵啊，所以呢最容易这个中风啊、脑梗呀这些。我们刚刚呢就治了这3位病人，刚刚这3位病人吧，也代表小孩的啊，一般1岁之内的，就治疗的越早，年龄越小，治疗的效果越好。他就和正常人一样啊，考硕士的、考博士的、考大学的很多。那么他年龄大一些呢，就是年龄越大，治疗越晚，那么效果就越差。像他们这么大的孩子，一个疗程是30次，每年最少要治3个疗程。那么现在刚才像这个成年人啊，他呢，现在女性也很多，因为抑郁症的、焦虑症、脑梗的、中风的，尤其这个面神经麻痹呢、睡不好的，像他们这个是一种临时性的疾病啊，只要调理就有效啊，只要治疗就能够痊愈。我是世界针灸联合会的副主席，世界中医联合会的副主席。我呢现在有3个证啊，最主要的就是脑瘫康复主任医师，有内科主任医师，还有国际针灸执业医师啊，有3个科技进步1等奖，有5个科技进步2等奖。这是胡总书记、习总书记、金总书记都专门接见过我。一共有10组的柜子，在柜子里头都展示的我们的各种科研成果，我们的自主知识产权我们的社会对我们的各种认可。我们这几年我们治了快40年了，已经39年，历经39年，治了80多个国家的病人，当然是中国的最多治了已经20多万病人。 我们总有效率是97.8%，那我们的痊愈率也就是基本正常的是49.7%，所以这里头呢考硕士的、考博士的都是很多，所以是治疗的越早效果越好，是简单医学、有效医学、安全医学可以为国内外为人类服务，为人类解除痛苦，为人类谋福祉。谢谢。
We did this pre-recording yesterday with Dr. Guo, and she's one of the many women that I admire very much. And she was also nominated for the 2005 1000 Women for the Nobel Peace Prize project. And she has been doing a lot of these promotion and also training courses to patients and to doctors. So if you would like to hear more about that, then we could give you some of the links, and we also hope that there could be more connections with the traditional ways of treatment. So now I would like to invite Dr. Zhang Yifang. She is Deputy Director of the Meridian Research Center of Beijing Yanhuang, and also President of the Beijing Yifang Boshan Academy of Traditional Chinese Medicine. She has been engaged in Western medical clinical practice for nearly 20 years and has accumulated rich clinical experience. In the late 1990s, she began to do theoretical research on traditional Chinese medicine. And her books include fire therapy of TCM and also body control bioelectrotherapy of TCM. She is with us in the room tonight, but she wanted to make sure that her speech would be well understood by the interpreters. So she also did a pre-recording of her speech. So we are going to show the speech, but then during the question and answer session, so we would like to invite her to speak to you and to answer questions. So now let us listen to Dr. Zhang.
在座的各位领导、专家、学者、教授，大家现在好。我是来自于北京炎黄经络研究中心副主任，我还是北京一方博盛中医研究院院长。今天和大家共同分享的主题是中医与哲学关系。要想知道中医与哲学是什么关系，首先想要和大家说一下，要知道两个概念。第一个是什么是中医，第二是什么是中医学。什么是中医呢？中医是我们中国人自己的民族医学。那么什么是中医学呢？中医学是以中医中药理论与实践经验为主体，研究人类生命活动、健康疾病转换规律及其预防、诊断、治疗、康复的和保健的综合性学科。中医学至今已经有数千年的历史。那么我也要知道一下，中医学的理论体系都包括哪些呢？首先有这么4个方面。第一个是气医元论和阴阳五行论。阴阳五行学说和气医元论，它是中医学理论的哲学基础。第二个是以整体观念为中医学理论的指导思想。第三个是以脏腑经络的生理和病理为中医理论的研究核心。 第4个是以辩证论治为中医理论的诊疗特点。以上是中医学理论的4个方面。那么中医与哲学到底是什么关系呢？首先要知道，哲学是中国古代人对自然界的一切物质的存在的世界观和方法论。从古至今，中医学与哲学有着特别的紧密联系，它们相互交错。哲学思想已经渗透到整个中医医疗体系的各个方面。那我们说一下中国哲学思想的主要范畴是2个，一个呢是宇宙学的七元论，比如说在七元论上的大家都知道，万物生命之根呢是气，而宇宙运转的道呢就是气在流动中的推动而产生的万物。比如说太阳从东方升起，从西方落下，那一天昼夜分24小时，一年四季分春夏秋冬，人的生命无时不在气的运行中变化着，这是道的规律。第2个呢是属于叫阴阳五行学说。那阴阳五行学说呢，在阴阳它是宇宙分天地，所以说天地呢又分阴阳，万物呢是阴阳2气合之产物，而阴阳的灵魂呢是平衡。人类只有达到阴阳平衡，才是健康的最佳状态。所以说气一元论和阴阳五行学说这2种哲学思想，同时呢又是中医学的基础理论重要的组成部分，2000多年来一直支撑着中医学术的发展，指导着中医临床的方方面面。中医学在中国人民心中的地位是什么样的呢？首先，中医学呀是人类历史上各种传统医学中体系最完备、经验最丰富、影响最大的一支，最有价值的富矿。中医哲学强调辩证施治，强调整体观念，强调心身协调，强调人与自然、社会、环境等各个方面因素的统一与平衡。实际从原则上讲，哪个角度，中医与哲学都挑不出任何的错误，因为它符合天地人合一之道。我们看看今天的人类，在新冠疫情，它敲响了人类健康的警钟。在当今世界，随着科技和经济的高速发展，在生活水平提高的同时，健康已经成为最突出的问题。越来越多的人呢，开始意识到健康啊比财富更重要，防病呢比治病更重要。所以说呢，中医养生的优势啊已经凸显出来。那么我们针对着当今的新冠疫情，如何增加机体免疫力，预防疾病的发生呢？我们看当今的新冠疫情的肆虐于整个世界的今天，我们中华人民共和国党和国家非常重视人民群众的生命安全及健康，敬畏生命，热爱生命。针对疫情呢，制定出了一系列的养生保健方法。今天呢，就给大家介绍一个，是我们中华人民共和国卫健委中医药管理局关于印发新型冠状病毒肺炎康复期中医指导建议试行通知， 明确呢把312经络锻炼法作为患者出院后适宜的自我干预方法。下面我们就来介绍一下312经络锻炼养生保健方法。首先我们要知道312经络锻炼法，它的创编是我们祝总湘教授。祝总湘教授是中国著名的经络学家，先后呢被美国、英国、法国等10余国家授予勋章、博士、教授、顾问等称号。祝总湘教授创编的312经络锻炼法，全球受益人群遍及10几个国家，超5000万人之多。曾在1997年的年代被国家体育总局推荐为科学健身法。那么我们312经络锻炼法是打开健康大门的金钥匙。中医哲学思想既是宇宙学又是生命科学，所以说我们的312经络锻炼法，它符合中国特色的中医精髓。祝总湘教授他牢牢抓住了经络养生是生命灵魂，他把老祖宗的养生学应用到了极致。在经络锻炼法上，312经络锻炼法有6大特点。第一个是可以治，第二是属于全治，第三是根治，第四是简单易学，第五是费用低廉，第六是防治常见病、疑难杂症。祝总湘教授把他创编的312经络锻炼法总结为3性，它既有科学性，又有真实性，还有有效性。所以说，欢迎想健康的广大朋友学做312经络锻炼法，百病无，百岁康，少花钱，少遭罪，节省医药费。今天就和大家分享到这儿，谢谢大家的收看，再见。
So you can see that, well, we don't have the time to do the demonstration of the 312 meridian exercise. Of course, you could also search and then look for it. The 3 refers to 3 acupuncture points, and 1 means an abdominal breathing, and the 2 is 2 squatting exercises. So just now, Dr. John said that this is low cost. Actually, it is no cost. And this for us, when we are doing the our rural reconstruction movement in China, in the villages, then we always do this, promote this as a kind of exercise to for body for body enhancement. The problem is, as you just heard, these we have had thousands of years on not only acupuncture or on the Qi exercises, but then the question is, many of these are not recognized by the WHO or by the so-called Western medicine, because Western medicine, then they require that you have to be clinically proved and tried. But then by clinically proved, they refer to only the kind of Western medicine's way of doing things. So even when certain practices have been there for thousands of years, they are seen as unscientific, and therefore which they would be said to be infeasible. And and ineffective. And I think it is not only in China, but also in Africa, in India, in many places in the world where we face similar problems that, for example, the FDA would validate a lot of Western medicines, and yet for Chinese medicines or Indian medicines, then it is very hard for them to be validated. So for example, this time for the COVID-19, so we have very effective medicines for early stage treatment, but then these are not accepted in the Western many countries in the West. So now we would like to move from China to India. And we are very happy to invite Dr. Tushara Lal, who is a research assistant under the Research and Development Wing of Pankala Kasturi Herbals Private Limited in Kerala, India. She has teaching experience in various Ayurvedic colleges in Kerala as assistant professor for about 10 years in both clinical and non-clinical undergraduate teaching. And she has been involved in the field of research recently. So now, please, Dr. Tushara Lal.
Good evening to all respected luminaries. I'm Dr. Tushara Lal, Research Assistant, Pankaja Kasturi Herbals Limited, India. And the institution where I'm working, they have various patent medicines for different pathologies related to respiratory or digestive system or cardiac pathologies and so on. And they are all Ayurvedic formulations. And I today want to share some glimpse of Ayurveda in indigenous ways, like because we are natives and it is so linked with in our genes, the practice of Ayurveda from our home itself. We have many ways through which we get accommodated to this life science. For example, Ayurveda discusses about seasons, and among these seasons it is classified under two categories. One is adana kala, that is where the environment is in a position where a lot of infections could affect the animals or plants or the any living species would be affected by a lot of infections. And that is the kala, or that time period is considered to be from January to mid July. And then the next category of seasons are Visarga Kala, that is from mid-July to December. And that is the time where environment is favorably protecting us from the infections. So most of the pandemics or epidemic infections, if we see, that have a great spread during the initial seasons. And that is what we observe in almost the viral diseases or the epidemics we have seen here. And many a times from the ancient people, especially in India and in Kerala, they have a way of rituals which have been followed so that they could get compatible with the environment, their body could prevent the infections. So it is sort of a preventive immunity raising kind of rituals which is advised in Ayurveda, which is being followed from years and years throughout in this Bharat or in India. So among that, if I'll tell you one, like during these initial seasons, as I've said, January to mid-July, there are a lot of festivals and celebrations where people take sweet dishes or pongal. We say pongal, magara pongal, and so that is the rice pudding which is being made with jaggery and other spices like elaichi, then sugar and banana and all. So it is a nutritious food which has the elements that is also included under the herbs or herbal remedies that could give you nourishment or protect you from various epidemics. Likewise, the day-to-day rituals, if you take diurnal rituals, if you take, Ayurveda has very strictly followed a set of rules, that is people should follow all this in their day-to-day life, in the seasonal changes, so that they should be much safer in the preventive aspect from the epidemics. So that is, Ayurveda is so well linked with our life that we cannot separate it from the Ayurvedic point of view or our way of life. So it is very well, everyone is like following most of the practices which has been told or mentioned in our classics. Then now if we come from the prevention side to a little more clinical side, most of the joint diseases is been very well having a good prognosis by Ayurvedic ways of healing. Like if you consider the osteoarthritis, so that is a joint disorder, and the symptom is pain, and whenever there is pain there is definitely tissue damage. So how the Ayurvedic approach is, like how to repair the tissue and pacify the aggravated toxins and bring the normalcy back to the body. So that is how we see it. So for that, first and foremost thing is to bring repair to the tissue. The tissue damage should be corrected, and that is done by the medicated oils, that is processed with Ayurvedic herbs, that is applied to that area, and the massage is given. When you do the round massages or which stimulates the venous return, so then there is a heat energy which is generated when you have roundabout movements around your joints. So by that heat there is vasodilatation, there is dilatation of the vessels. The medicine essence which is present, that is the Ayurvedic herbal essence that is present in the oil, that is absorbed by the skin to the inner deeper tissues, like to the muscles, to the joints, to the cartilage, to the synovial joint, and so on. So that causes a tissue repair and the bringing of pacified doshas. We term it as doshas. We have three doshas according to Ayurvedic classics: Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and each dosha have its own symptoms. So whenever there is an aggravation in Vata dosha, there is the painful conditions, dryness or degradation, degeneration, all such symptoms are seen. So when this medicated oil is applied around the joint, it is absorbed into the joint, the tissues are being repaired slowly, and there is loss of reduce of symptoms. So this is a very usual practice. This need not be required an Ayurvedic doctor or an admission in an Ayurvedic hospital, which is daily practiced day to day in most of the families, especially older people. They buy the Ayurvedic oils, they just apply it, and they get relief. So this is a simple glimpse of Ayurveda in our indigenous way, and many things are there which in the following sessions we would share. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And from what we just heard from China and India, then we see that there are a lot of similarities in terms of the approach, the philosophy, and what we find in common is that we do not see the person as separated from the environment, from the habitat, from the context. And so the approach is usually a holistic one. But then usually this kind of approach under Eurocentric views would be seen as superstitious or unscientific or backward. But then I think now we are going to hear from Latin America, and then you will see how similar there are, well, in these kind of approaches between Chinese, Indian, and also the indigenous communities in Latin America. So now I would like to hand over to Hernan Vargas, our moderator for Latin America. Hernan, please.
Gracias, Kinchi. Gracias a todas y a todos. con mucho gusto de estar aquí en este espacio. Gracias, gracias a la compañera de la India. Bueno, tal como decía recientemente en la presentación, compañeras, yo soy militante de ALBA Movimientos y justamente en este momento estamos muy agradecidos de participar de esta discusión. Nos parece fundamental, en este momento fundamental de crisis civilizatoria del capital, mirar la importancia del aporte de la medicina tradicional en el momento actual, donde además creemos que la pandemia del coronavirus ha sido un catalizador o un elemento que ha demostrado con mayor fuerza la crisis del modelo civilizatorio occidental. Vamos a tener entonces un panel de discusión con distintos participantes de Latinoamérica, fundamentalmente de la región andina. Por un lado vamos a tener a Jorge Ishizawa del Perú, que trabaja con agricultura campesina. Por otro lado vamos a tener compañeros de Venezuela, de comunas urbanas, el caso de Jesús García. Luego vamos a tener la participación de una compañera de Bolivia, que es agrónoma y trabaja con medicina natural, es de la red de la diversidad, nuestra compañera Madela Pacheco. Y luego vamos a tener la oportunidad de mirar la experiencia de medicina tradicional indígena en el Amazonas, en Venezuela, con nuestro compañero Magno. Pero para introducir un poco esta discusión, solo quisiera plantear algunos elementos antes de dar la palabra a nuestro primer exponente. Quisiera compartir rápidamente la pantalla para mostrarles algo de lo que recientemente nos mostraba el compañero. En este gráfico se puede ver, lo compartía recientemente el secretario ejecutivo de ALBA TCP en Latinoamérica, cómo este gráfico muestra cómo durante la pandemia los ricos se han hecho más ricos, ¿no? Y vemos entonces algunas de las principales jefes de las principales multinacionales, sobre todo de las grandes empresas de la tecnología. Vemos a Elon Musk, a Jeff Bezos, a Bill Gates, cómo durante el tiempo de la pandemia cada vez sus niveles de riqueza han venido aumentando, ¿no? Y quería compartir un poco esto porque creo que es una expresión de cómo frente a una situación de crisis de la mayoría de la población, frente a una dura situación donde la humanidad combate para poder defender la vida, vemos cómo los más ricos tienen justamente una situación inversa, donde cada vez sus riquezas vienen aumentando, ¿no? Entonces vemos un marcador del COVID que está alrededor de 100 millones de personas contagiadas, 2 millones de personas fallecidas, pero al mismo tiempo, repito, mientras los pueblos entonces batallan por la vida, los ricos se hacen más ricos, ¿no? Y esa es una expresión del modelo civilizatorio occidental, donde además vemos en el caso de Latinoamérica, como de esos 100 millones de personas contagiadas, solo entre Estados Unidos y Brasil tienen cerca de la tercera parte de todos los contagios a nivel mundial, un poco más de 34 millones entre ambos. Estados Unidos tiene 26 millones de contagiados, Brasil 8 millones de contagiados, y también entonces tiene la misma cantidad de fallecidos, la misma proporción. Cerca de la tercera parte de los fallecidos a nivel mundial han estado en Brasil, en Estados Unidos, que además son, junto con India, los países con mayor nivel de contagio, con mayor nivel de decesos. Recientemente veíamos cómo el anterior secretario de Estado de los Estados Unidos, Mike Pompeo, planteaba con orgullo cómo habían debilitado la alianza de los BRICS y cómo entonces Brasil e India ya no formaban parte con la misma fuerza de esta alianza. Y me parece importante mencionar esto porque hacemos una crisis civilizatoria del capital. También tenemos entonces una batalla entre los modelos de sociedad que se vienen empujando desde el norte global. Por un lado, así como les decía, que en el caso de Latinoamérica, Estados Unidos y Brasil tienen cerca de la tercera parte de todos los contagios con el coronavirus. En el caso de los países del ALBA, Cuba, Venezuela, Bolivia, no llegan entre todos ellos a tener 200.000 contagios, ¿no? Entonces, claro, no es solo un tema numérico, tiene que ver con una concepción de cómo priorizar la vida o el capital en el desarrollo de las políticas de Estado, ¿no? Y por último, quería mencionar que justamente en esas configuraciones vemos también cómo en el sur global en general hay una emergencia fundamental de tejidos comunitarios, colectivos, autogestionarios, cooperativos, mutualistas, lo llama Sandro Mezzadra, un compañero de Italia, que viene identificando cómo justamente en el medio de la crisis del coronavirus, todos estos tejidos que ya existían, que han sido parte de la retoma de raíces históricas de pueblos indígenas, campesinos, originarios, pero también han sido parte de resignificación de culturas urbanas, de resistencia, han significado la construcción de tejidos de solidaridad que frente a las crisis permiten que las comunidades se apoyen. En el caso específico de Venezuela, por ejemplo, ya les comentarán los compañeros, pero nos parece importante decir que solo con alianza entre gobierno, comunidades organizadas, además con un nivel de conciencia importante, se ha logrado hasta ahora mantener un nivel aplanado de la curva de contagio, pero además hay que decir que esa fórmula es la que nos ha permitido también resistir, no solo durante el 2020, sino durante los últimos años de resistencia frente al bloqueo imperialista. Un poco la misma situación que Cuba ha vivido, le ha tocado al mismo tiempo que combate la crisis del coronavirus, también tiene que combatir el rigor de sanciones unilaterales, de medidas coercitivas unilaterales, en este caso de los Estados Unidos. Por eso recientemente veíamos que la Alianza Bolivariana de los Pueblos, el ALBA TCP, ha venido planteando la necesidad de levantamiento de toda medida de sanción en el medio de la pandemia, pero además también ha venido planteando la necesidad de la compra colectiva, de la creación de un banco de vacunas para poder combatir de manera colectiva entre varios países el problema de la pandemia, donde además vemos cómo los países con mayor nivel de contagio y que han tenido mucha mayor negligencia en la atención de la pandemia, son también los países que han venido monopolizando la compra, mientras que los países del sur global tienen dificultades para la adquisición de la vacuna. Entonces, desde Venezuela, desde Cuba, se ha venido promoviendo no solo la producción, sino también la alianza con otros países para poder acceder a la vacuna, generar un banco común. Y bueno, concretamente en el caso de Venezuela habría que decir que en los primeros meses de la pandemia, incluso el mismo presidente de la República empezó a hablar de la importancia de la medicina natural, de la medicina tradicional, y los medios tradicionales, la mediática, el mainstream empezó a burlarse de que estaba mandando a tomar guarapos, remedios que no iban a servir de nada. Al día de hoy en Venezuela hay un antiviral que se ha venido desarrollando justamente a partir de los estudios internos de cómo garantizar o cómo reducir el nivel de contagio con el coronavirus. Entonces, bueno, con estos primeros elementos quisiera entonces dar la bienvenida a nuestro compañero Jorge Ishizawa. Jorge enseña en la Universidad de San Cristóbal de Huamanga, la Universidad Nacional de San Cristóbal de Huamanga, en Ayacucho, Perú. Viene trabajando, viene enseñando además el tema de la agricultura campesina andina y también las tecnologías campesinas indígenas como parte del proyecto práctico, ¿no? Entonces, bueno, queremos dar la bienvenida como primer panelista a nuestro compañero Jorge Ishizawa, que nos envió un video pregrabado con su participación. Adelante entonces con el video.
Starting on the question of vaccines, of course, it should be a public good. I don't think it. I mean, the whole idea of the initial idea about vaccines were as public goods. I mean, it's only now under capitalism and this tribe of liberalism that corporations have taken that over. And you see, there is a whole question about vaccines that I don't really know. I mean, I really don't know about that. I know that there are vaccines. The whole idea of vaccines of the as a sort of a promoting the reaction of the so that the body itself reacts or is in a way primed to cope with the disease, whatever it is. But I find a lot of wisdom in this idea of promoting, of priming the body to react to diseases. But the idea is that to transform that into a sort of a single approach to fighting a disease is, and you know, the whole idea of fighting a disease is something that I find very alien to at least for Andean indigenous communities. People don't think like that. Or they don't think of disease as an enemy. It's something that comes and, you know, it's a visitor. And of course, you want it to go as soon as he is or it is satisfied with the visit, you know. So there is something that we call dispatching, you know, or sending it away, but treating it in a way that it's satisfied, and then go as soon as it is satisfied with the visit. That's more or less what I have heard from people. The idea is that I think there is a profound difference in the world that we live in modernity and in the traditional communities of the world. I mean, in these traditional communities, you live in a universe that does not have any limit. While in modernity is a man-made society. So whatever comes from outside that place, modernity does not treat it as a visitor, but as an alien, you know, that it's something to be feared. But that's not the case in the traditional communities. I find in whatever I have read, it's not only in the Andean peoples. I think it's all traditional peoples in the world. The world is the universe, the whole universe. So that makes for a strong difference, I think, and we should take that into account. And of course, in modernity, everything in capitalism, everything is transformed into a good that is sold, bought, and it's for profit. So that is a tremendous transmogrification, they would say, that something called a medicine get transformed to, you know. Something that we have lived in this, in our country, in Peru, is this corporatization of medicine in the past few years, a few decades, I would say. By the time entered adulthood, I still live in a public health system. Now it's completely privatized, corporatized. And well, going back to traditional medicine, it's not a, as I say, as things are not, as the world is not divided between friends and enemies, but all as possible friends, especially. In traditional medicine, a disease is not considered an enemy, actually. So what there is at hand is like we were talking about Dr. Tu's knowledge of traditional Chinese medicine, you know, thousands of years of knowledge that makes this, especially plants and other substances, be used to alleviate diseases or conditions that weakens you. For that, I think that's the practice is still here. And during this pandemic, we have had a project with institutions in Bolivia and Peru in the Andes, and we have been made aware much more now that the use of traditional medicine is very, very widespread still in the rural areas especially. And it collides with the practice of modern medicine, of what we call the health, national health system. There was another question, Kinchi, about indigenous civilizations.
You already mentioned it. You already mentioned it, but then if you would like to say more.
No, the thing, as I was saying, the real difference, I think, is how big is your world? How big is the universe that you consider you are living in? And that, I think, it makes a whole difference with this, what we call indigenous civilizations. And we have one thing in common, I think, in those civilizations, in the indigenous people. And they live the whole universe as part of it. And so that's something that makes the behavior and, you know, disposition, life disposition, that is completely different. And it takes a lot of opening your mind that to understand that, you know, once you have gone through school, especially modern schools.
Muchas gracias por la participación de Jorge, que gentilmente, para garantizar su participación, nos envió un video pregrabado. Nos hacía además el llamado de la importancia del debate sobre las vacunas como bien común en este momento de la humanidad, la centralidad de la medicina indígena tradicional, pero sobre todo además cómo el planteamiento del modo de vida indígena plantea una alternativa civilizatoria frente al modelo en crisis, ¿no? Sin demorar más, quiero dar el paso a la siguiente participación, a nuestro compañero Magno Yaraque Barros, Él es parte del movimiento 27 de octubre, que es un movimiento que trabaja en el estado Amazonas, en Venezuela, es activista, es trabajador cultural y es estudiante de medicina nativa Wotuya, Piaroa, uno de los pueblos indígenas venezolanos. Entonces, bueno, le damos la bienvenida a nuestro compañero Magno.
Sí, buenos días o buenas tardes en otras partes del mundo. Saludos, Hernan. Un fuerte abrazo desde aquí, desde el estado Amazonas, la Amazonía venezolana. Bueno, en nombre del movimiento 27 de octubre quiero realizar mi intervención respecto a la medicina tradicional indígena, bueno, teniendo como referencia al pueblo indígena Wotuja, a lo que nosotros, digamos, en la cultura occidental se le denomina Piaroa, pero su nombre original es Wotuja. Quisimos hacer un discurso escrito como para precisar ciertos elementos que no queremos que se alargue bastante la intervención, así que bueno, empezamos. La perspectiva de la medicina tradicional que tenemos en la Amazonía venezolana, teniendo como referencia el conocimiento del pueblo Wotuja, que viene siendo una herencia milenaria, porque viene de transmitirse de generación en generación desde hace miles de años. Por eso también podemos llamar medicina ancestral milenaria. La medicina tradicional, desde la visión de los sabios, abuelos, jefes, chamanes, curanderos, es una medicina que no se aísla en una cápsula académica, ya que el médico o chamán aprovecha las ceremonias especiales para transmitir su sabiduría, donde generalmente se aprende viendo y escuchando, sin necesidad de cuestionar, así como nos enseñan en la academia occidental. Desde el punto de vista material, el chamán tiene como fuente de la medicina 3 elementos: animal, vegetal y mineral. Aunque casi siempre se utiliza para curar u otra planta o medicina o hierba, también se utilizan piedras como cuarzo, también se utilizan huesos de animales y entre otras cosas para crear herramientas necesarias o utensilios que se utilicen en rituales o ceremonias de curación y de sanación. Ok, un punto importante de la medicina ancestral desde la visión de los sabios y sabias. ¿Nos escucha, compañero?
Te escuchamos, adelante.
Ok, bueno, seguimos con la intervención. La medicina tradicional desde la visión de los sabios, abuelos, jefes, chamanes, curanderos, es una medicina que no se aísla en una cápsula académica solamente, ya que el médico o chamán aprovecha las ceremonias especiales para transmitir su sabiduría, donde generalmente se aprende viendo y escuchando, sin necesidad de hablar, como enseña la academia occidental. Desde el punto de vista material, el chamán tiene como fuente de la medicina 3 elementos, como por ejemplo el animal, el vegetal y el mineral. Aunque casi siempre se utilizan plantas para curar, también se utilizan piedras como el cuarzo, o también se utilizan huesos de animales, cabellos de animales, entre otras cosas, para los utensilios o herramientas necesarias para los rituales o ceremonias. Un punto de la medicina ancestral desde la visión de los sabios y sabias es el relacionamiento armónico con el entorno, es decir, que solo se extrae lo necesario de la tierra para la reproducción de la medicina. A diferencia de la industria que busca incrementar su capital a expensas de la extracción desmedida. Este relacionamiento armónico de sabios y sabias se traduce en más sabiduría. En el chamanismo Wotuja, por ejemplo, hay una particularidad y es que en los procesos espirituales hay una gran diferencia entre la lógica occidental y la sabiduría ancestral. Es decir, que las prácticas del sabio, ceremonias para curar enfermedades, utilizamos la lógica occidental, lo cual no permite que tengamos un resultado como el que esperamos nosotros desde el punto de vista occidental o desde el punto de vista de nuestra cultura occidental. Siempre será, aunque siempre será el mismo resultado, que es la curación o la sanación. Una sanación palpable, una sanación demostrable. Utilizamos siempre el 2 más 2 son 4 o la lógica que siempre queremos aplicar, pero en el mundo espiritual es algo distinto, porque se centra un poco más en elementos como la fe o la confianza que se le da a este tipo de práctica. Un ejemplo de ello son los rezos y cantos para proteger los alimentos contra enfermedades, donde casi siempre los miembros de la comunidad se mantienen con mucha fortaleza y vitalidad. También los rezos y cantos para curar el mal de ojo o maleficios, que curiosamente no cura la medicina académica, a pesar de los síntomas físicos de algún paciente. El resultado es demostrativo frente al uso de la medicina ancestral, la sanación. También existe en el chamanismo Wotuja algo a lo que podríamos llamar demarcación espiritual, donde los chamanes demarcan el territorio de la comunidad con una protección invisible para mantener el espacio libre de todo factor que perjudique a los miembros de la comunidad. Un elemento esencial para comprender mejor la medicina ancestral es la fe y la confianza que el pueblo o la comunidad le brindan a ella. Por eso, cuando hablamos de demarcación espiritual del territorio, estamos hablando de una especie de ceremonia en donde los chamanes, de acuerdo al territorio de su comunidad o su perímetro, utilizan una protección, digámoslo así, invisible, en donde, valga la redundancia, protegen el territorio de maleficios, de enfermedades, de malas energías, de malos factores, agentes físicos o espirituales que pudieran afectar a la comunidad. Eso ocurre en el pueblo Wotu. Un elemento esencial para comprender mejor la medicina ancestral es la fe y la confianza que el pueblo o la comunidad le brindan a ella. Es una característica necesaria y que la propaganda occidental ha venido destruyendo, haciendo creer que la pastilla o cápsula que produce Pfizer es más efectiva que el brebaje del abuelo o la abuela. Es por eso que una propuesta sería impulsar una plataforma de comunicación para fortalecer y promover el uso de la medicina tradicional a nivel internacional. Las farmacéuticas nos indican la historia y varias investigaciones que han inventado enfermedades de laboratorio con el objetivo de vender la solución. Una solución que al final tiene como fuente los mismos conocimientos ancestrales y tradicionales, pero que han sido expropiados con grandes ánimos de lucro para ponerlos al servicio del capital. La medicina ancestral tiene el objetivo de curar la enfermedad y de proteger. Ese único objetivo. No tiene la necesidad de crear enfermedades para vender o para curar. En cuanto a la respuesta de la pandemia, basta con ver los resultados que arrojan las cifras. Vamos a hablar del estado Amazonas, que es Venezuela, el estado Amazonas en Venezuela, que tiene una población de 146.480 personas y donde el número de contagios es de 803 personas, lo que representa a un 0,005% del total. Y el número de muertes oficiales es de, escuchen, 28 personas de ese total de 146.480, lo que representa un 0,00019%. Es decir, no llegamos ni nos acercamos al 1% de fallecimiento. Los números suelen ser fríos y sin sentimientos. Nos duelen esas 28 personas fallecidas en nuestro estado Amazonas. Pero la intención es reflejar el microscópico número porcentual de muertes. A pesar de la respuesta del Estado venezolano, en condiciones limitadas por el bloqueo económico y el embargo comercial que pesa sobre nuestro país por parte de los Estados Unidos y las potencias mundiales, a la que está sometida nuestro país, que dificulta el ejercicio de la atención de la salud. cabe la incógnita: ¿cómo nuestra Amazonía en Venezuela ha logrado contener el coronavirus? Y una de las teorías es la medicina tradicional, donde la mayoría de la población está conformada por los 21 pueblos indígenas en esta zona de Venezuela y que han logrado protegernos del virus mundial. Algunos de los elementos que han influido para tal protección son, primero, la medicina tradicional propiamente dicha, que materialmente tiene su fuente vegetal, animal y mineral, lo que ya explicamos anteriormente. La segunda, la medicina tradicional espiritual. Hablamos hace rato de la demarcación espiritual del territorio que realizan los sabios y los chamanes de cada territorio y de cada comunidad. La protección de los territorios a través de cantos y rezos de los chamanes. A veces suena un poco ilógico, pero desde nuestra lógica. Pero si aplicamos el conocimiento y la sabiduría ancestral, podremos entender. Bueno, es cuestión también de indagar un poquito sobre eso. Y 3, hábitos alimenticios. A base del pescado, que tiene un alto valor nutritivo, tubérculos y sus derivados. Pero también hay una fruta a la que llamamos manaca. En Brasil llaman açaí. Los wotujas le llaman nenea. Pero también pueden conseguir en internet con su nombre científico Euterpe oleracea. Euterpe oleracea, para los que quieran investigar. Su nombre científico. El mismo forma parte activa de la gastronomía tradicional y que tiene propiedades como 16 aminoácidos y minerales como calcio, magnesio, hierro y un alto contenido de potasio, vitamina E, vitamina C y vitaminas del grupo B. Elementos como estos, que forman parte de la dieta amazónica, pudieran estar incidiendo en la contención del coronavirus. Eso por el tema de la alimentación, la dieta y todos los factores que han intervenido en la contención de la pandemia, esta enfermedad que ha aquejado a todo el mundo entero. Y que, bueno, como ya pudieron ver, los números demuestran que nuestra Amazonía ha sido muy poco tocada con respecto a los resultados de la muerte y los contagios con respecto a la pandemia del coronavirus. Para terminar, en el marco del reconocimiento y respeto de civilizaciones y culturas diversas para nuestra sobrevivencia, como lo establece en uno de los puntos, o punto final, citaremos el artículo 122 de la Constitución de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela, que dice así: los pueblos indígenas tienen derecho a una salud integral que considere sus prácticas y culturas. El Estado reconocerá su medicina tradicional y las terapias complementarias con sujeción a los principios bioéticos. En Venezuela se tiene como principio el reconocimiento y respeto de la medicina tradicional, lo que sitúa a un chamán meñero. Hablando nuevamente del reconocimiento y el respeto de las civilizaciones y culturas diversas para nuestra sobrevivencia, citaremos el artículo 122 de la Constitución de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela, que dice así: los pueblos indígenas tienen derecho a una salud integral que considere sus prácticas y culturas. El Estado reconocerá su medicina tradicional y las terapias complementarias con sujeción a los principios bioéticos. En Venezuela se tiene como principio el reconocimiento y respeto de la medicina tradicional, lo que sitúa a un chamán meñero o marí del pueblo wotuja en el mismo nivel que un médico de academia. Es una propuesta en el marco de la legislación internacional para que se reconozca la medicina tradicional en todos los estados y en todos los países del mundo. Así que muchísimas gracias a todas las personas que nos escucharon a través de este foro. Saludos, Hernán.
Muchas gracias, Magno. Qué gusto escucharles desde allá de Amazonas y bueno, y que hayan hecho este esfuerzo para poder compartirlo. Quiero además enfatizar estos últimos puntos que planteaba para la discusión el compañero Magno, la importancia de la medicina tradicional como elemento de contención de las posibilidades del potencial desplazamiento del coronavirus, de la pandemia, en la región del Amazonas, ¿no? Y bueno, y también entonces esta importancia de darle rango, de pelear por darle rango constitucional a la medicina tradicional en nuestros países. Decía que entonces pasamos ahora con nuestra querida compañera Madela. Madela Pacheco es integrante de la Red de la Diversidad en Bolivia. Ella es agrónoma con diplomas en gestión ambiental y ha venido trabajando, construyendo aportes de medicina tradicional en las comunidades campesinas. También es gestora cultural y bueno, entonces nos va a comentar en este momento desde Bolivia, concretamente desde Sucre. Un abrazo, Madela, bienvenida.
Hola, ¿cómo están todas y bueno, aquí en Bolivia es buen día, ¿no? Todavía. Y un gran saludo a todas y todos, lindo escucharles. Y bueno, pues escuchándoles a todas y todos, surgen varias cuestiones, pero también, a ver, desde Bolivia, nosotras y nosotros como familias campesinas, pero también como personas que estamos ahí. Y ya el compañero del Perú manifestaba de que hemos hecho dar la bienvenida a lo que es el COVID. Para el mundo indígena, para el mundo campesino, para nosotras y nosotros es como un hermano, hermana que ha llegado a visitarnos y dentro de eso pues se le hace un ritual a la enfermedad que llega, darle la bienvenida para luego también que se pueda marchar, ¿no? Dentro de esto, también las familias durante el 2020, cuando llegó la pandemia a Bolivia, muchas de las familias han ido hacia las plantas medicinales. Es decir, que muchos y muchas estaban dejando de lado porque también ya le daban poca importancia. Y es en ese momento que también han empezado, han iniciado a darle esa importancia, a reconocer ya en los mercados donde se vendía, entonces darle ese valor, ¿no? Principalmente esto ocurría en las ciudades urbanas, no tanto en las comunidades campesinas, ya que las comunidades campesinas tienen su yatiri, tienen su partera, quien es la que hace nacer a la guagua, es decir, a los bebés. Entonces, esa cosmovisión está muy fuerte y muy penetrada en el mundo indígena campesino boliviano. Y también, pues, dentro de eso, dentro de las 36 pueblos indígenas originarios campesinos que están reconocidos aquí en Bolivia, hay diversidad de prácticas para poder contrarrestar lo que es la pandemia. Asimismo, las familias en Bolivia han logrado ese reencuentro, pero también ese consumo de alimentos producidos en casa, producidos por el agricultor, revalorizar lo que es la agricultura campesina desde un enfoque también por el tema de todos los cuidados, ¿no? Y creo que ha sido un momento de estarte un cacho eh, quieto, porque también todo en la vida es cíclica, pero ese momento de respiro también hacia la madre tierra, ¿no? Entonces, creo que ha sido un momento de dar ese paso, ¿no? Por otro lado, en Bolivia se tiene pues ya desde hace tiempo, desde el 2013, una ley que es la ley de la medicina tradicional, que es la 459, donde visibiliza todo el aporte de la cosmovisión andina, indígena, originaria, campesina, afroboliviana, eh, que se tiene el valor de la medicina tradicional la misma que la convencional, es decir, que va de la par, de igual a igual. En los hospitales se ha ido implementando lo que es la medicina tradicional para tener esa opción cuando la gente vaya al hospital o al médico pueda decidir y optar por la medicina tradicional o por la medicina convencional. Entonces, dentro de esta ley que se ha promulgado, está pues escrito y visibilizado muchas de las acciones que se hace en el mundo indígena campesino. Por otro lado, también están dentro de eso las guías espirituales, los naturistas. Son varias áreas, como ya decía el compañero de Venezuela, ¿no? Son varias áreas, varios aportes que hacen nuestros yatiris, nuestros sabios de las comunidades indígenas, y también pues por otro para poder contrarrestar, ¿no? Esto lo que es de la pandemia. Asimismo, como ya les manifestábamos, yo soy parte de la red de la diversidad y el año pasado nosotros hemos iniciado lo que es ya con el tema del tejido de cuidados, porque trabajamos a nivel Bolivia y dentro de eso hemos abordado lo que son las joras, que son las plantas medicinales, que lo hemos dado a conocer mediante redes digitales, mediante radios comunitarias, también pues en diferentes idiomas, el quechua, el aymara, el español y el guaraní, ¿no? Para que toda la gente tenga información sobre las diferentes plantas, pero también conozca de cómo va a utilizar. Asimismo, esto ha servido de que nos encontremos y reencontremos, que no estamos solos, estamos acompañados, ¿no? Y estamos, esos reencuentros que existen entre nosotras y nosotros. Por otro lado, también en esta pandemia hemos visto de que muchos de los barrios, podríamos decir, de las zonas urbanas, han contrarrestado lo que es la pandemia con plantas medicinales como la cebolla, la huirahuira, el ajo, también el matico, dependiendo de la zona, ¿no? La manzanilla. Y para ello, muchas y muchos de las familias no han asistido a centros de salud. Han logrado contrarrestar la pandemia con estas plantas, es decir, se enfermaban, pero ellas hacían las acciones con lo que es con la cebolla, la huirahuira, la miel de abeja, cuán importante ha sido en esta pandemia y sigue siendo, y también revalorizando mucho en este último tiempo el consumo de los alimentos producidos por nosotros, ¿no? También en las ciudades se ha logrado aperturar una producción de hortalizas dentro de casa para poder consumir lo nuestro, porque también ha habido un momento de que ha subido los precios, ¿no? Entonces, todo ese tema ha dado un vuelque, ¿no? Hacia nosotros y a darnos cuenta de que nosotras y nosotros podemos consumir nuestros productos. Por otro lado, también para la COVID, pues se han hecho vapores, ¿no? Y también todo el tema de lo que son los mates. Y en Bolivia podemos manifestar también de que tenemos un apoyo incondicional de nuestro gobierno, ¿no? Porque ya durante 14 años nos ha estado visibilizando todas las acciones, actividades de los pueblos indígenas originarios campesinos, la sabiduría de los sabios, ¿no? Entonces, ha sido muy importante estar ahí, ¿no? Bueno, durante el año pasado hemos tenido un poco de negatividad, pero bueno, este año hemos retomado por el tema de que también ha entrado un gobierno nuevamente que apoya al sector campesino, ¿no? Entonces, dentro de eso, el gobierno está sacando diferentes acciones mediante virtuales, pero también podemos decir, está dando pues textos, ¿no? Textos de la medicina tradicional, donde da a conocer las diferentes cualidades de los 36 pueblos indígenas originarios campesinos, donde hay diferentes plantas, ¿no? Y para que cada uno tenga en su hogar y pueda, pues, preparar de acuerdo a lo que aquí en la receta dice, cómo podemos también nosotras y nosotros contrarrestar, ¿no? Desde casa, sin ir al hospital, dar a conocer a nuestros hijos e hijas, ¿no? Entonces creo que ha sido muy importante que se visibilice todo este saber ancestral y también pues lo que es del pueblo indígena originario campesino. Por otro lado, ya finalizando, también nosotros como indígenas, campesinos, en el idioma quechua, yo soy de la parte más andina de Bolivia, y en la parte quechua nosotros decimos que tenemos que descansar, respirar, ¿no? Es decir, que la enfermedad nos ha venido para que descansemos un poco. En quechua lo decimos samay, ¿no? Descansemos de este ritmo de vida que vamos llevando tan aceleradamente. Creo que es muy importante que darnos un respiro y también pues pensar en nosotros, pensar en la madre mama, pensar en cada uno y una que habitamos esta tierra, porque muchos y muchas nos vamos al extractivismo y ese respiro que nos dice que hagamos la pandemia es muy importante para cada uno y una de nosotros para lograr ese vivir bien que pensamos como bolivianas y bolivianos. La vida es cíclica, pero siempre es necesario ese respiro, ese samay. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchas gracias a ti, Madela. Además, por todos los elementos que aporta para enriquecer la discusión que ya venían. Afortunadamente, todas las intervenciones han sido continuidad. Creo que en este caso me gustaría resaltar esta idea de la importancia del cuidado o de los cuidados como un elemento central dentro de la cultura andina, ¿no? Que funde además lo indígena con lo campesino y que incluso, como bien planteaba Madela, se despliega sobre la ciudad, ¿no? Incluso en lo urbano, así como el compañero Magno nos decía que la cultura indígena ha permitido contener el desarrollo del coronavirus en la Amazonía. Creo que también Madela nos plantea que en lo urbano, en alguna medida, la cultura indígena ha permitido contener el avance del coronavirus. Y por supuesto, no se puede dejar de mencionar el tema de la importancia de la retoma del proyecto plurinacional en Bolivia, después del golpe de Estado del año pasado, como este año se retoma, y con ello todo un conjunto de políticas públicas en esta concepción de Estado plurinacional que reconoce los estados, las naciones indígenas, los pueblos indígenas como parte de la construcción del país y por lo tanto permite avanzar en esta proliferación de la medicina tradicional como parte de esta cultura. Bueno, con esta intervención entonces vamos ya al cierre al menos de esta parte del panel con Latinoamérica. Vamos a tener entonces una mirada desde las comunas urbanas en Venezuela con nuestro compañero Jesús García. Él es parlamentario, parte del órgano ejecutivo de la comuna socialista Altos de Lidis. También es fundador del colectivo cultural Antimantuanos y es delegado del Partido Socialista Unido de Venezuela, del PSUV. Entonces, bueno, bienvenido, Jesús.
Acá en Venezuela es de día. Quería saludar con mucho afecto a la profesora Quinchi, a Jade y a todos los compañeros y compañeras que nos escuchan y que se están conectando a través de esta vía. Bastante interesante esta invitación que nos han hecho, bastante interesante han estado cada una de las intervenciones. De lo que más nos gusta, lo decía Hernan hace unos minutos, nos llama la atención, es que a pesar de que estamos en distintos continentes, el nivel de pensamiento y la importancia de lo que es la medicina natural ha sido relevante para todas y todos. Así que me parece muy importante que tengamos pues como el mismo sentido, el mismo reconocimiento de la importancia de justamente la medicina natural para todas y todos en el mundo. Nosotros queremos hablar brevemente, aprovechando los minutos que tenemos, de nuestra experiencia, ¿no? Empezando por algo muy interesante que dijeron tanto Katharina como el profesor Niang, que es lo que respecta a la revolución de las mentes, la descolonización de las mentes y la importancia del conocimiento popular, ¿no? Entendiendo que, fíjense, desde que partió, lo decía Hernan claramente, desde que inició la pandemia o que llegó el COVID-19 en nuestro país, de las cosas más relevantes es que mucha gente sacó pues a la palestra pública lo concerniente a la importancia del conocimiento ancestral en términos de plantas medicinales. Plantas que tienen potencialidades antivirales y que fueron, bueno, de mucha ayuda en los inicios de la pandemia. Aquí hay una planta muy famosa que lleva por nombre malojillo. Es una planta que se hacen tés con ella y es una planta que ha servido mucho para combatir el COVID acá. Hay otra que también tiene un nombre, atamel, que también sirve para los dolores y para todo se ha tratado para todo el tema viral. Y etcétera, o sea, hay un montón de plantas, el jengibre, que sabemos que sí es muy bien conocido en el Asia, que ha servido mucho para la tos, y ha sido de las principales herramientas de las clases más pobres para combatir el COVID y simplemente se basa o nos basamos en la sabiduría de nuestros ancestros, lo decía muy bien Magno por allí, desde lo indígena hasta nuestras abuelas y abuelos que han sido los principales cuidadores e impulsores de este tipo de salud para todas y todos en nuestro país, entendiendo que somos un país que se encuentra bloqueado, que se encuentra asediado y que le cuesta mucho la adquisición de medicamento a nivel internacional, incluso de medicamentos. Es algo bastante inhumano, pero bueno, es nuestra verdad ahora mismo. Entonces, justamente en esa descolonización de la mente, del conocimiento y esa revolución nos ha llevado a entender también que la medicina la medicina occidental, la de las pastillas, la de los laboratorios, viene justamente de ahí, en buena medida viene de ahí, viene de las plantas medicinales, viene desde lo natural, desde ahí proviene. Y luego, bueno, una serie de elementos químicos y tal nos hacen creer que eso es otra cosa, pero realmente existe desde la historia existe un bagaje de conocimientos que debemos seguir manteniéndolos, debemos seguir reimpulsándolos. En ese sentido, además entendiendo la gráfica que mostraba Hernan allí, ¿no? Hay mucha gente, o muy poca gente, mejor dicho, haciéndose multimillonaria en este momento y quizás el tema farmacéutico esté ligado a esas riquezas que siguen creciendo y creciendo y creciendo mientras una población se sigue empobreciendo, empobreciendo, empobreciendo. Entonces, la única opción que nos queda a nosotros, los pobres del mundo, es justamente la solidaridad, es la articulación entre países, entre pueblos, y además de ello, ese conocimiento ancestral para poder curarnos en medio de esta pandemia y lo que venga, ¿no? en el mundo. Nosotros en nuestra comunidad lleva por nombre Altos del Lidis, es una comuna, es una organización, son 5.000 habitantes, 2.000 familias que tienen una organización social, política, autogestionaria, y eso tiene pues un bagaje cultural también, pero además tiene una potencialidad organizativa y un anclaje jurídico que lleva por nombre comuna. Esta comuna tiene un sistema de salud, ¿no? Sistema de salud, bueno, reconocido por algunos movimientos sociales en el mundo. Y este sistema comunal de salud autogestionado en medio de la pandemia se dio cuenta que había pues que generar otros tipos, otros mecanismos de cuidado de la gente, de la población ante la pandemia para poder salvaguardar la mayor cantidad de vidas. En ese sentido, impulsamos no solamente la farmacia convencional que tenemos, que es una farmacia que funciona a través de la solidaridad internacional, que nos hacen llegar de una u otra manera, esquivando el bloqueo, algunos medicamentos, también se activó una farmacia de índole natural, que en un primer momento impulsó la siembra y la producción de plantas como la sábila, que también es conocida como el aloe vera, y medicinas antivirales como el atamel en este sentido y el malojillo. esos medicamentos, además de darle, qué sé yo, una pastilla para el dolor de cabeza o para lo que fuese, a cualquier tipo de habitante de la comuna que sea beneficiado por este sistema comunal de salud autogestionado por la comunidad, o brindarle algún tipo de cuidado con la medicina occidental. Además de ello, se le daba algún tipo de sobre con medicinas naturales para que también acompañara el proceso de una manera más sostenida. Esto fue parte esencial de lo que nosotros logramos hacer durante el momento más fuerte de la pandemia del COVID en nuestra comunidad, en nuestro país. Esta farmacia natural nos dio también pie a entender algo que decían los compañeros y compañeras de China que planteaban por allí, buscar lógicamente alternativas en el tema de la medicina y alternativas en el tema de tratamiento de dolencias corporales. Creo que la compañera de la India también hacía relación a eso. Y hemos lanzado este año en nuestro plan anual la necesidad de que en nuestros consultorios de salud no solamente esté un médico o una doctora indicando recetas de medicina occidental o mandando a hacer exámenes cotidianos o reglamentarios para diagnosticar enfermedades, sino que además incorporemos todo lo que concierne a masajes, a terapias de calor, al uso de aceites medicinales, de esencias medicinales, al impulso de la fisioterapia, a una mejor orientación en términos nutricionales. Además que nosotros tenemos un programa nutricional dentro de la comuna y hacer de todo eso un sistema que además logre dar a entender una filosofía, como lo decían los compañeros chinos, una filosofía que además nosotros la hemos aprendido de Cuba, que es la medicina preventiva. Creemos que es súper clave seguir impulsando la medicina preventiva como elemento primordial para un país como el nuestro. No solamente pudiera servir, lógicamente, para cualquier lugar del mundo, pero para un país como el nuestro, en las condiciones en las cuales está, la medicina preventiva es casi que un elemento de Estado. Si no prevenimos enfermedades, cuando nos toca hacer milagros para comprar medicinas, vacunas, lo que sea que nos toque comprar para salvar a nuestra gente, nos toca hacer de la medicina preventiva nuestra principal arma, nuestra principal herramienta. Entonces, bueno, en resumidas cuentas, saludamos este espacio, saludamos que nos hayan invitado. En Venezuela, vale acotar, los medicamentos que se van a llevar adelante para la vacunación frente al COVID son de orden gratuito, no tienen ningún costo, son para toda la población sin ningún tipo de discriminación. Fue presentado hace algunos días el Carbativir, que es un medicamento venezolano, unas gotas frente al COVID con química venezolana, con elementos naturales venezolanos. Esa va a ser nuestra propuesta al mundo para combatir el COVID, y además de esa propuesta que es el Carbativir, en nuestra población, en nuestros barrios, en nuestras poblaciones, existen pues estos guarapos, como le decía Hernan, estos brebajes, esta sabiduría popular que en nuestra comuna se viene trabajando sistemáticamente y que seguro ayudará a que la población esté más sana en estas condiciones de pandemia y en cualquier condición que venga. Muchas gracias a todos. Namaste para los hindúes y xie xie para nuestros compañeros chinos. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias a ti, Jesús, por esa intervención, que sin duda es un buen cierre en términos de continuidad, de complementariedad con varios elementos de los que ya se planteaban, la importancia en el modelo de gobierno local de la comuna, de la construcción de un sistema de producción, pero que también esté centrado entonces en la salud, en las necesidades fundamentales de la comunidad, y cómo además eso ha sido un elemento de resistencia contra el bloqueo, y sin duda además de vínculo, de esas lógicas de resistencia, hemos aprendido mucho de otros pueblos, de los pueblos hermanos, pero sin duda, por ejemplo, el pueblo cubano ha sido una referencia, además quizás no en cambiar el modelo occidental de la medicina, pero sí al menos cambiar el enfoque de la medicina, tomando esta idea de la medicina preventiva que hemos aprendido de nuestros compañeros, de nuestros hermanos en resistencia de Cuba. Entonces, bueno, les agradezco mucho por la oportunidad de este panel, de este espacio de discusión. Le paso entonces la palabra a nuestra querida moderadora central, Kinchi Lao.
Thank you very much. Actually, we have had so many wonderful speakers that we would actually like to hear much more from them. But then because of the time limit, so we would like to first proceed to the Q&A session. And first, I would like to thank the interpreters for well, helping us for this exchange. Since it is quite late now in China, it is about 11 o'clock in the evening, I would like to first give the floor to Dr. Zhang Yifang, who has been staying with us the whole time. So maybe Dr. Zhang, would you like to say a few words to respond to some of the speeches by others? And then I would like to see whether Patrick, you are back here to join us. Maybe you could come up next. And if Paulo would also like to say something, I would also like to ask if Dr. Diop would like to say something. Then I would like to invite any other speaker to say, to give your remarks. So Dr. Zhang, please. So now we will have Xiao Mei interpret into Spanish. Okay, Dr. Zhang, 张老师。
大家好，今天听了以上众多的国外的朋友们的分享，非常受教育和收获很大。那么对于整个的主题，为了人类的健康和要能够把我们的真正的中医的文化和中医的精髓能够奉献给人类和世界人民。我最后呢想说和强调，给大家推的这种我们祝总湘教授研发的312经络锻炼法，就是增加机体免疫力，预防各种疾病发生最好的一把金钥匙。如果能够希望和欢迎和喜欢我们312经络运动锻炼的朋友们，请上我们的中国的网址，查阅我们祝总湘教授的312具体的锻炼方法。举办方可以向我们的主办方去了解我们的312的整个情况和发展的历程。谢谢大家。
Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Zhang. So they have been promoting this for a long time, and this is actually very effective. And many of us practice the 312 meridian. So now I would like to invite Patrick Bond to speak to us. Patrick, please.
Very warm greetings, Amandla. Power aware to the people. Our Johannesburg slogan. Ben Cashdan gave you a very good sense of why this vaccine as a public good is so vital. And next Friday, we're hoping that WTO trade-related intellectual property system that not only Kenya and India and Eswatini, Swaziland, and South Africa can push through with that global public goods strategy, but that China and Russia, who have their own vaccines, Sinovac and Sputnik, will actually agree that intellectual property on the vaccines and on treatment of COVID-19 is a barrier to progress. And this is why I love the Global University on Sustainability. This is why I've had, I think, Kinchi, since I got involved because Samir Amin began to put us together. And what the late Samir Amin, Africa's greatest political economist, always did, he understood capitalism's penetration of the... I said Samir Amin was profoundly anti-capitalist, especially when it comes to monopolies like intellectual property on medicine. So he always encouraged Kinchi, and this is why the Global University of Sustainability was such a good mix. He encouraged that, and he also encouraged the respect for the non-capitalist, again, as part of resistance. So let me quickly just remind that next Friday, the Global Commons, bringing the vaccine into generic production, will be critical. I'm really hoping, can you and your comrades in China are able to lobby or emphasize that if the Chinese government and the Russian government can join South Africa, India, Eswatini, and Kenya as the 4 countries pushing for decommodifying the intellectual property to spread it. That is a respect for Western medicine, not as a capitalist commodity, but the opposite, as a commons. But the second thing I'd say, and I'll just conclude, we do have problems when we try to find the medical fusions that we want between everything I've learned about traditional medicines on the one hand, and Western technology that may be necessary when we have capitalist diseases like COVID-19. Now, the example of AIDS is critical because it was there that our own traditional medicine promoters, like the health minister, Margaret, was pushing too much on tradition and not on the Western medical and decommodified, generically produced medicine. So it was one of those moments where if the non-traditional medicines, those of you advocating so eloquently, you've taught me so much, if you can engage more strongly, and I would suggest one journal, International Journal of Health Services, it's the main anti-capitalist health journal. It's edited by Vicente Navarro, great journal. But if you can make your cases there, there'll be a much stronger audience. Because it was set up in the early 2000s as Western medicines called antiretrovirals against African traditional medicines. Unfortunately, we didn't find the fusion, and the Western medicines were demanded by activists, and they won, and the result of life expectancy in this country and most others going from 52 up to 65 because of non-commodified commons for the medicines that are generically produced. So I will leave you with this wonderful challenge that the Global University for Sustainability is going to be a critical place to have more of these debates, to find the best of both worlds, to find where there are conflicts and how to resolve them. So I do hope, comrades, that we can find, in the spirit of Samir Amin, the anti-capitalist critique that will generalize and make commons out of Western technology, but also to the right formula for embracing the non-capitalist, the traditional resistance. You've inspired me a great deal in this session, so please keep it going. This dialectic is actually where society needs to be. Thank you. Amandla, too.
Amanda Waitu. Thank you very much, Comrade Patrick, for these wonderful remarks, especially reminding us about the spirit of Samir Amin. So now we would like to invite our dear friend Paulo to make some comments. Paulo, if you please.
Primero, muchos saludos a todos, acá de Brasil. Quería decir que me gustó mucho las ponencias, aprendí muchas cosas. Pero acá en Brasil no tenemos, por lo que yo sepa, uso de medicinas tradicionales. Y hay, pero en las ciudades más pequeñas, en el interior del país. En las ciudades medianas y grandes no hay más, casi nada. Pero una cosa que yo quería decir es que En este momento en Brasil las cosas están muy graves, particularmente en la Amazonía, el estado de Amazonas. Ya está, hace más de una semana tuvieron que transferir mucha gente, creo que más de 200 de Manaus para otros hospitales en otros estados. Ahora empezó en Rondônia, empezaron también a transferir, porque el sistema de salud no consigue más tener espacio para todos. Pero hay diferencias también porque, digamos, los más ricos estaban indo para los hospitales más caros de São Paulo, pero también hace una semana estos hospitales no reciben más infectados de otras regiones. Entonces estamos en una situación grave y para la gran parte de la población solo el sistema que tenemos, un sistema público de salud, y en muchos lugares están casi ya están en colapso. No sabemos lo que va a pasar, porque apareció también una variante nueva del virus en Manaus, que infecta mucho más rápidamente, pero aún no llegó a otras partes del país. Bueno, yo quería decir esto, que acá estamos todos muy preocupados, principalmente porque el gobierno es contra toda política de salud para atender la población. Entonces, esto es más complicado porque tenemos una posición distinta pero ahora con la vacuna tal vez las cosas sean un poco mejores. Bueno, muchas gracias a todos. Gracias, Kinchi. Gracias, Jade. Thank you very much, Kinchi. Thank you very much, Jade.
Okay, so maybe maybe there's some connection problems. So it is getting actually quite late now. We have gone over 3 hours. So I would like to ask if the speakers have anything to say, because the whole idea of this panel is to introduce you to each other so that we could start more networking, we could start more exchanges among ourselves, and so that we can share not only ideas and practices, but also different visions, different cosmovisions. And so maybe please, if you would like to speak, then please unmute yourself. So Katharina, would you like to say something, or Ben, or Dr. Niang?
I only have a few minutes left. I have to go soon, but I can't even express to all of you how moving it has been for me to hear from traditional medicine experts from all the way from China all the way to the Amazon and Peru. It is so moving, and it's something I so strongly believe in. I was raised that way by a mother amongst 8 children, and we have never taken antibiotics, and we always trusted herbs. I raised 3 kids on traditional Chinese medicine, and I take acupuncture every week. So I personally have this experience. But I have to say that my experiences in East Africa have also told me that, as somebody said, I think the Professor Cheikh Niang said it from Senegal, it is in the hands of women. I strongly believe so. The care of especially in malaria, the care for the children is in the hands of the women. And I think treating COVID, treating malaria, it has been proven that it is possible with herbal treatment, good nutrition, self-care, taking this into your hands. I do think vaccines and other medicines have their place. I do think that a combination of these treatments, as it is practiced in Chinese hospitals, what I've heard, is the way to go. But I mean, 500,000 children dead every year is just a catastrophe that has been going on for so many decades before COVID, and will go on after COVID, that as long as we don't have another way, we have to go with the herbal way. And I just wanted to say, because of COVID, it will be 1 million children estimated this year dead from malaria in East Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa. And also I want to say, because we have heard so much from Chinese experts, in 1982, the Chinese government offered to the WHO in a big conference in Beijing to give artemisinin to Africa for free to stop the malaria pandemic. And the WHO and the pharmaceutical companies from the West refused this offer in 1982. We estimate that up to 30 million people died because of this refusal, because the WHO only admitted the artemisinin as a first-line treatment for malaria in the early 2000s. So we had 30 years without any functioning medicine in Africa for malaria, and millions of deaths. And UU2 only got the Nobel Prize 40 years after her discovery. So I think this is the capitalist system of dealing with severe illnesses and deaths. And I think we all have to get together. And I think between just what are we now, 31 people, and our viewers, I think we all have the energy to do this. So thank you for letting me be a part of this, and seeing such incredible wisdom together here. Thank you.
Thank you, Katharina. Well, those of you who missed the film that we screened with the English subtitles, then you still have a chance to watch it. That will be in 1 hour. So 1 hour later, then on this same Zoom, then you can see the film with the Spanish subtitles. But most of it is being, the spoken language is mostly English with some of the local African dialects. So you could still try to watch it. If I wonder if there's any other speaker who would like to say something. Okay, so I know it is getting very late now, and thanks again to our interpreters. I would like to give Hernan 1 minute to say a few words, and then I will just wrap up very quickly. So Hernan, please.
Gracias. Gracias, Kinchi. Gracias a todas y a todos los panelistas. Ha sido realmente una oportunidad, un privilegio compartir de sabidurías, como bien planteaba Katharina recientemente. Desde acá, desde Venezuela, nos quedamos muy agradecidos, muy agradecidas. Estuvimos compartiendo con Magno, impresiones con Magno y con Jesús, y realmente nos parece un espacio muy importante. Yo solo remarcaría 2 cosas. sea, me parece importante recalcar la idea de que el coronavirus, la pandemia global, solo ha sido un catalizador de una crisis civilizatoria que cada vez se hace más evidente. Y creo que la expresión clara del momento actual es que ha dejado de manera desnuda la característica contradictoria, antagónica del capitalismo, de la civilización occidental capitalista, frente a la reproducción de la vida. Es decir, el modelo de civilización actual nos plantea lo que vemos hoy en día en Estados Unidos. Una cantidad de recursos importantísimos. Si uno revisa las estadísticas de qué nación estaba en mejores condiciones para atender una emergencia sanitaria, una pandemia global, los Estados Unidos era el primero. Pero sin embargo, la prioridad de los Estados Unidos ha sido otra, ha sido salvar y garantizar medidas de salva y resguardo, que son los que nos permiten tener este nivel de aumento de riquezas de Jeff Bezos, de Elon Musk y de otro 1% de la población que se ve beneficiado. Mientras el resto de la población tenemos graves urgencias para tratar de resolver la vida, ellos se hacen más ricos. Y en ese sentido quiero cerrar diciendo que me parece fundamental que hagamos esfuerzos para poder nuclear e incluir en la agenda política todo lo que tiene que ver con las formas comunales para garantizar la reproducción de la vida. La medicina tradicional en ese sentido tiene que empezar a formar parte de nuestra agenda política. Deben continuar los espacios de reflexión y seminarios, debemos seguir produciendo tal como lo hacían Chi y Jade, a quienes les agradecemos por este espacio, produciendo artículos, reflexiones, espacios para comentar, y desde Venezuela además nos gustaría muchísimo que pudiéramos pensar en alguna brigada o espacio de intercambio sobre la medicina tradicional. La riqueza de sabiduría que hemos tenido el día de hoy, nos gustaría mucho que una vez que la pandemia amaine, podamos tener algún espacio de brigada internacional donde venga gente de la India, venga gente de África, venga gente de Asia, que pueda compartir con nosotros sus experiencias en medicina tradicional. Así que bueno, nuevamente muchas gracias a todos y a todas. Un fuerte abrazo desde Venezuela Bolivariana.
So thank you very much. We have a reader where we have put a lot of articles and also the writings of the speakers from tonight. So you could go to Global University for Sustainability, and then under this session on the traditional medicines, you can find the reader with a lot of readings. We also will be hosting an Agora session, which is on the 31st of January, and that would be 10 o'clock in the evening, China time, and 2 p.m. UTC time. So please come to see us at the exchange. So that is a place where we welcome everybody to have come to a chat. And we will be linking up with you to consider further exchanges. And we will be having the 8th South-South Forum on Sustainability in the last 10 days of June this year. And we will be organizing several panels on the question of traditional medicine. So thank you again. Thank you especially to our interpreters for doing this long interpreting. And I also thank you, thanks to all the speakers for joining us. So have a good night and have a good day. Bye.